Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to the episode number 43 of the series of tutorial on how to build a premium theme for WordPress. Welcome again. In this tutorial we're gonna take a look on how to create a custom sharing section for our blog post. So if we take a look at the front end and we stay currently in the gallery to post is the one that I used in the past couple of lessons to style properly the content and all these fancy things like tooltip and popover. What I want to do, I want to create a bottom section here before the end of the post, and before we code the comment section that is really important, I want to create a custom section to have some pre-built sharing functionalities. Of course, this stuff, they can be added with a plugin, or you can use Jetpack that comes with a really cool functionality to activate sharing options for all different social medias. But a lot of these functionalities sometimes are quite heavy because they pull the JavaScript source file of, for example, Twitter or Facebook to access the API functionalities and edit how the actual social media generates the preview of the post that we are sharing. We don't want to do that, or in my case, I don't want to do that. I would not just code the lightest functionality possible to have a pre-built sharing buttons for Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. So let's take a look on how to do it in a really easy way. First of all, let's access, of course, our code editor, and let's go in the template parts and let's access the single.php is the file that I'm using to print the actual article, that is just the content and the entry footer. After the entry content, I want to create another row, another div class called sunset-share. And let's close the div and let's create, of course, also in this case, to keep our code organize the comment that it's closing this div. For now, we're gonna code everything inside here, but then as usual, to make things better and to keep our code organized as possible, we're gonna transfer this code into a static function, into a unique function inside one of our PHP functions files. So here, let's open the PHP tags. Let's close it here and let's start writing some really simple code. First, we need to collect the title and the URL. Most of the times we need just the URL, but in the case of Twitter, we want to also share the title, and for Twitter, we want to also share our handler if we have the handler. So let's start by collecting these two data. First, let's create a variable called title that is going to be equal to get the title. This function of WordPress is simply retrieving the title, and it's doing exactly like this function, like the title, but the title automatically prints whatever result we have. Get the title doesn't print anything, it just like retrieves the title and it lives here in this function. We can inject inside this variable, so it's not printing anything for us. The second variable, the second value that I need is the permalink, so let's create a variable called permalink, and it's gonna be equal to get underscore permalink. And we don't need to specify any attributes because we are inside the post loop, the blog loop, so all these informations are pre-populated for us. Now we can create a couple of variables containing the actual URL that our social media needs to have, our social media icons need to have in order to work. So first, let's create the Twitter URL. And the Twitter URL, it's equal, really simple, to the actual Twitter, HTTPS, because it's a secure connection, //twitter.com/intent/tweet ? So this code, this actual URL, is a default functionality of the Twitter API that allows a specific user or a specific code, in this case a simple URL that is going to be attached to a link, to a click, to activate the intent of writing a tweet. The Twitter API, the open Twitter API are really limited, and you can totally check the list of what you can do and all the specification inside the official documentation of the Twitter API. But what we need now, we want to just tweet a simple message, and our message has only 3 values. The first one after the question mark, and if you know a little bit of PHP, this looks totally like a PHP URL where we pass the variable with a get. It's equal to text, and it's going to be equal to our title because that's what we want to pass. So let's concatenate this information with the dots, and let's write the variable title ampersand amp semicolon. This is the actual HTML Unicode of the ampersand, so we cannot write just simply the ampersand, but we need to write the entire code. The second variable that I want to pass is the URL, that it's the one that Twitter needs to make the tweet clickable and share the URL with whatever user is following you. And the other parameter, of course, is another PHP value, and it's going to be equal to the URL, that in our case is the variable permalink. And the third value that applies only, the third variable that applies only to Twitter, unfortunately we cannot use it for Facebook or Google+, is the via variable. That, I don't know if you notice, sometimes you have a tweet and then at the end you have via and the hashtag name or the Twitter handler of the author of the tweet. And this is really good to have more visibility. So let's add this because we actually have it. If a user is using our sunset theme we access in the backend, if you remember, we built many videos ago this sunset section for the sidebar where we're collecting the Twitter handler, the Facebook handler, and the Google Plus handler. We can use this Twitter handler and we can retrieve these information by just using this default options of WordPress. But before printing it here, we have to check if we already have it, if you actually have it, because we don't want to write the via variable and leave it empty. So let's create a variable called Twitter handler. It's going to be equal to inline PHP declaration. And we have to check if we actually have the Twitter handler. So simply just write get option, and our unique handler, our unique ID for this option that we declare when we created the admin panel was Twitter underscore handler. If this is true, it means that it's not empty. We can use this in connection with a simple string that it's gonna be ampersand amp semicolon via, it's equal. Let's connect and let's escape the attribute of this option, the Twitter handler. So we're gonna clean also a little bit this script. Otherwise, if the Twitter handler is empty, so the user didn't declare a Twitter handler, just return an empty string. Semicolon at the end. We can use this variable now to concatenate it directly here after the permalink. So if we have a Twitter handler, this variable is going to print the ampersand via variable with our Twitter handler. That in my case is Alicat. And let's simply, as a test, echo the Twitter variable that we just generated. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh. Let's go back here and we see that we have the full URL here. And we have also a weird symbol because I have already a class called Sunset Share. So the Sunset Share is the class that I'm using for my font icons, for my custom icon moon. So let's check what we created here. Let's access the SAS folder, the base, and let's go into the font icons. We have the Sunset Share, that is the icon, so I cannot use that specific class. Let's just simply change it to Sunset Share This. Share This is a pretty common, is a pretty used, well-known WordPress plugin. We're gonna create a Sunset Share This. So we have this unique class that it's pretty unusual and we shouldn't have it. We shouldn't have this problem. Here we have the full Twitter URL to share this stuff, to create an intent of tweeting. The text that we're gonna have in the tweet is the actual title of our post, and the URL that we're sharing is the full URL of our post. Plus, we have the via at the end with my Twitter handler. So we're gonna see in just a few moments how this generates a proper tweet. Let's keep going and let's keep creating also the URL for Facebook and Google+. Let's write a variable called Facebook, and it's gonna be equal to the URL for Facebook. So it's pretty similar, but in this case it's https://www.facebook.com/sharer to access the sharing options, /sharer.php to access the script that Facebook uses to share a public URL, question mark, also in this case is PHP, so we have to pass a variable after the question mark, and the variable that we have to pass is just the URL. It's equal, this is the unique variable, equal to, of course, our permalink. And that's it. The last sharing option that I want to create is the Google+. So let's write just Google, that is going to be equal to single quotes as well, semicolon at the end, https://plus.google.com/share question mark URL. It's equal to exactly the same, the permalink. Twitter is the only social media that gives us the ability to dynamically write a message inside the tweet, and in this case we can have the title. We can extend this, for example, hey, read this, and have the title. So we can customize a little bit the tweet. Now we have to create the HTML structure to print the actual icons of this social media and hook these dynamic URLs that we created. We have in the design file the icons of the social medias that we want to use, so it's time to add those to our iCommune custom collection. So if we access iCommune, we have still the list of all the icons that we use to generate our custom font. Here we can import more icons and re-export that font to replace the existing one. So let's click to import to set, and on my desktop I have slice 1, 2, and 3 that are the respective icons. I can edit this information. This one is gonna be called Twitter. This one is gonna be called Google Plus. Google Plus. And this one is gonna be called Facebook. I have to select also these and click generate font, and here I have all these new icons with new code applied to it. Let's download this file, and of course let's replace it with the existing one. Let's copy our new declaration of our sunset icon. Let's access our font icons.scss and let's replace everything here. Command V. But of course we have to update again the URL because it's slightly different from the default one. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end and let's see if we broke something. Let's refresh. We still have perfect the tag and the comment icon. So now we can print and we can check if our Sunset Twitter, Google Plus, and Facebook are actually working. Let's access again the single.php and let's write a little bit of HTML. So first, let's create an order list. And let's write the first list element. I want to create the A element, the link, with the URL, the href that this element is pointing to the actual Twitter URL that I generated. So let's echo the $Twitter. Here I want to apply an HTML5 declaration or rel no follow to avoid to give SEO ranking to these URLs. And here inside the A tag, I can write my span inline class sunset-icon sunset-Twitter. There are, and close the span tag, that if we check the font icons are exactly what we need to call the sunset icon to call the actual icon font, and the sunset Twitter to generate the Twitter icon. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh and see if it worked. It worked. We have the Twitter icon. Of course, we have to style a lot of things here, but it's working. So let's do exactly the same for Facebook and Google+. Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. Let's replace Facebook, and here instead sunset Facebook, and here sunset Google and Google+. Save it. Let's go back in front end. Let's refresh. We have our 3 beautiful icons. So do we want to check if it works? Boom. Yes, look at that. Let me go back and let's do something. We want to force the target to go to a blank page because we want to open another screen. Let's click open a new page. We have the pre-populated message with our custom message, the title of our post, the URL, and the via @Alicat. And this is great. Of course, I think Facebook is not working because I'm not logged in, and Google Plus is not working because I'm not logged in, but they work. Now let's take care of styling this stuff and let's make it really cool. So first of all, let's access our Sass folder, and inside the sunset.css, let's scroll all the way down, and inside here, let's style this sharing widget. Even if it's not a widget, let's call a widget, or like simply sharing section. So it's not confusing with a widget. We have the first class that is going to be the sunset share this. And the sunset share this, it's a display block with text align center, and whatever order list is inside, this is going to have 0 margin and 0 padding. And then we want to remove the list style, and we want to put list style none. This way, the list style none will force our order list to not have the dots at the beginning of every list element. So this is great. Second thing that we have to do inside the UL, we have the list, the actual list item, and the item doesn't have to float. So let's say float none and display inline block. So we're using the same method that we use for the menu to have a list aligned to the center. Let's refresh, and now we have our icons aligned to the center. Now inside here, I don't want to keep indenting this stuff, but I want to keep the A tag, the link, outside because I don't need all these levels of indentations. And I want this style to be a font size of maybe 30 pixel. We're gonna check later. Here I want to include my animate mixing to have the color animated at 320 millisecond. Actually, I want the opacity, not the color. And here I can put the opacity to 0.75 maybe. And then I can declare the usual hover with ampersand column hover, comma, and ampersand column focus. I want my opacity to be 1. And let's give it a little bit of padding to actually, let's give it margin, not padding. Margin, it's gonna be equal to 0, but 5 pixel left and right. And let's declare also this element as a display inline block to have a full block clickable and having the margin properly activated. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end, refresh. Ooh, look at that. That's gigantic stuff. So let's adapt a little bit. We have the URL here. We don't have to include these animate because the A tag is by default animated. So it's gonna animate pretty much everything. Here I want this to be 20. Let's refresh. Oh, nice. Okay, let's use a quick title here, and let's use an H4 called share this. Nice. And let's use the same style that we used here for this bottom footer that I really like this style, but I want to use for the top. So let's copy this style and let's have here for the share this block, the border top. Save it, let's refresh. Nice. And let's give it a little bit of padding. Top inside, it's gonna be 20 pixel. You like it? Let's edit it a little bit like this. Yes, I like it like this. It's nice, subtle separation. I'm doing something really weird. I'm designing while I'm coding. That's not what you should do, but it's fine. Yeah, we have this line separation, so we can keep this consistency here. I like this. So let's have a padding top of 10 and then the border top of 1 pixel. And let's save it. And now we have our share this. Pretty much it's working everything here, but we can optimize this a lot by using our PHP function. So this right now, it's a manual thing that we wrote inside the content. What we could do, we could simply copy all this stuff, put it inside a function and call the function like we're doing here. We're currently a custom sunset posted footer. But because we want these pretty much to appear in every single blog post right after the content, we can use a pretty cool filter functionalities of WordPress. And let's take a look on how to do it. Let's access our ink folder and inside the theme support options. Below the section single post custom function, this is perfect. Let's create a function called sunset_share this. And open and close the brackets. Inside, we have to pass a variable called $content, and I'm gonna tell you later why we're passing this variable. Let's open this curly brackets, and inside here, we can paste all the code that we wrote here. So let's paste these entire section. Command X. Let's remove all these stuff. Let's save it. Let's put it here inside, but of course all these HTML doesn't work. So let's put everything, all of this stuff inside a variable called output. Then it's gonna be equal to all this good thing. Let's interrupt the output variable. Let's remove these PHP tags that we don't actually need because we are already inside PHP. Let's indent back to have everything properly aligned, and let's keep writing these output here. Let's close it here, semicolon, and we have to convert all these echo of PHP into an inline concatenated option. Of course, let's remember that if we use the same variable multiple times and you want to add elements to the variable or information text, you have to use the concatenation of the dot before the equal to not override what's inside that variable already. And of course, let's keep writing and let's not have an HTML declaration on multiple lines because this could create some really weird issue. And let's close all this stuff with the single quote and the column at the end. Perfect. Now we have this function. So usually what you could think, what you would like to do is just simply copy this variable and let's just echo this function here in PHP. But there's a better method to, instead of manually writing this function, we can automatically activate this function whenever we have content, whenever we have a single blog post and we are printing this after the content. Let's do it by creating a filter called add filter. This is a hook of WordPress that gives us the ability to attach a specific function to a specific situation in WordPress. In our case, what we want to attach is the underscore content. If you notice, this is exactly the same function of this. This function is printing the content of the post. This add filter is saying to WordPress to attach whatever things I'm gonna tell you later to the content. And after the first attribute, the second attribute, of course, is the name of the function that we want to attach to the content. And that's why we're passing the $content here, because this add filter to the content is passing the actual content of the content to this function. And now what we have to do, we have to return our dollar content concatenated to the dollar output. And let's return this stuff. So what we're doing, we are attaching this to the content because we have the full content of our blog post and we're attaching all this stuff. The other thing that we could do if you don't want to write another variable output is just writing the content and just concatenating these to the actual pre-default content that this filter is passing. So we avoid to create another variable and we are just injecting all these HTML directly inside the content and then returning the content with our custom function. Let's save it. Before checking though, we have to put a little bit of if statement inside here to check when we want to print this stuff. And in my case, I want to print this stuff only when I'm watching a single blog post. To do that, I have to use a pre-default function of WordPress that returns through. It's a Boolean function, returns through if I'm actually watching and I'm actually looking at a single blog post. The function is underscore single. This function is through only if I'm looking at a blog post. So no pages, no custom templates, no images, no comments, only if I'm inside a blog post. And the blog post includes also custom post types. Open and close the brackets and let's put everything inside here. Perfect. Let's remove this double dollar sign that could trigger an error, and we have to put an else because else, in case is not a single, so it's something else, we have to just simply return the content without any modification, because adding a filter to the content, it means that we're doing some editing, some heavy editing to the source code of these whatever variable we're passing before this variable, in our case the content, is printed in the page. So if we edit this stuff and we don't return it, we can just simply delete the content and not print anything. So always return, if you apply a filter to whatever section of WordPress, always return the initial value, otherwise it's going to be empty. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end and let's finally check. If we refresh, look at that. We have the share this, the content with this, of course, this inside the entry content. So another thing that we have to do, this is happening because the image, they are floating. So if they're floating, they're not creating any space here. And in fact, these share, this custom share that we generated and automatically has been generated inside the content, gets applied right after this stuff. Actually, like physically it's here. As you can see here, we have the first image, here we have the second image, but the share, it's below in the HTML structure, but it's here above because these floating elements are preventing this stuff to be actually properly aligned. So what we could do to solve it, we have to just simply select the sunset share this and apply a class called clear, apply a CSS attribute called clear both. The clear is used to control the behavior of a floating element. So because this div could be underneath or after a couple of floating elements, we have to clear the option with the clear property to specify which side of element floatings are not allowed to float. So we are saying to this element that this element is not allowed to float in both situations. It doesn't matter if we have a floating left or a floating right element around it, like before or after, this element is not allowed to float. So we are forcing this is a you have to be, you have to well behave, otherwise I'm gonna be really mad at you. So let's update the sunset class here by declaring clear both. Let's save it. Let's refresh. And now we have our button. Of course, this because we have the link. If we select this, and this is an A link, it's inside the entry content style with the primary color, but we can force this pretty easily by writing that this A tag inside the sunset share has to have a color of black. And we can also remove the rollover color for the hover state because I don't really like it. Let's leave it like that, and let's give it just an opacity, but maybe a more obvious opacity. So let's go 65. Let's refresh. Nice, way better. And that's it. So what we did today in this lesson, we saw how to create a custom sharing option by using no widgets, no APIs, and nothing weird, no JavaScript, just a simple link by using the default available open URLs of these social media. And we saw how to automatically create a function and to connect this function to the content in a way that we can use this function to generate custom content at the bottom of whatever section of WordPress without us writing manually this stuff. Because if you remember, we have a lot of different template parts, content aside, audio, gallery, and so on. So imagine if we had to manually write the same function for all the different contents or all the different single files. Then if we have to update the function, we would be forced to go back in every single file and update the function again. But now, because we created this in the theme support, automatically this function is applied to the content of all our single files, so just the blog post. And this is really useful. This is really great. I really suggest you to check how the filter hook of WordPress works and how flexibility and how many options you can activate for pretty much every section of WordPress. So it's pretty much it for today's lesson. I hope you enjoy. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can spend a couple of minutes to check the support me page on my website, where you can find all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do a better video and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, as usual, happy coding!